Hey everybody, hopefully you are doing well. See this color here, this orangey honey-like color? That's called Hopi blush. And for me, it is absolutely beautiful. It is stunning. I really like it. And at the 2025 Kiln Conference, I did a talk about how that comes about, both for the old prehistoric, pre-contact Hopi pottery and for the current Hopi pottery, because it is different. And so I have a recording of that, and I thought I would play it for you today. Hopefully you'll find that to be interesting. And if you do, a thumbs up would be appreciated, or possibly a subscription. And if you make a comment, I will respond. So stay tuned, let's get started. So I think we're ready to roll, if you are, and I am so excited because I talked to my wife about this stuff and her eyes just glaze over. So we get to talk about nerdy pottery stuff, and I'm very excited about it. So today I want to talk about Hopi blush. And I hope I didn't offend anybody because it's not the idea that I want to embarrass a Hopi person and have them blush. It's more about the color of their pottery. But before I get started, I want to thank some people. And the main one right now is Andy in the back. He has put together so much stuff. And quite frankly, without him, I wouldn't be here because I'd keep breaking stuff, and he's really helped me out with that. I think it's also important, he was talking about on the shoulders of other people, the people before us, way before us, our ancestors. We would not be here without those fine women who had this amazing artistic ability, and they applied that to their functional wear. I'm astounded every time I look at it, and I'm so grateful. I'm also grateful, obviously, to Mother Earth, because without that, where would we be getting our materials? It's all so important to us, so it's all exciting to me. And I'm going to talk about two things. Hopi blush, both in the past, the prehistoric, pre-contact stuff, and also in the present as well. So let's get to it. But before, I want to do a little quiz here. We have 4 kinds. I know there's something like 250 different kinds of pottery out there, but if I bring it down to 4 kinds, I want you to raise your hand on which one you think is the most beautiful. Okay? So I'm sure you can lower your hand because we haven't gone there yet. But so how many would say, number 1, the membranous stuff was most beautiful? All right, that's fine. And number 2, that's just all the black on white stuff. There's all kinds. How many kind of like that? And how about the Sitkiatki stuff? All right, good for you. And then Salado, which is Andy's favorite, tends to be. Okay, just want to let you know that 3 of the 4 are wrong. But we're all free to have our own opinions. So first question is, what is Hopi blush? This is the modern day post-contact Hopi pots. And so it is that kind of orangey, honey, yellow kind of color, and it varies. It varies quite a bit from one place to another, and for a variety of different reasons. And I always just love this Hopi color. And I thought originally it was all about getting Hopi clay, and I put a lot of effort into getting Hopi clay. Then I found out, well, no, it's not that, although it is partly that, but it's also some other stuff, which we're going to get into. But I totally admire this kind of Hopi patterns and things, although I never copy modern Hopi patterns, or well, I'll get into that a little bit later. But this is all about the clay color today, not about the paint kinds of stuff. So then the other piece is the older stuff. This is mostly Sitkiatki. And you look at the color of the paste or the clay, it looks kind of blushed, but not in the same kind of way. So what makes that different? We're going to get into that a little bit. But I think this is my first love. This is the stuff I really love. And you see a lot of variation, I think. Some of it is kind of white, creamy color. Some of it is pretty yellow. I think part of it is it's difficult to tell if it's because it's just old and there's patina on it and it's been underground for a long time. I don't know. We're going to get into that too. So those are things that I have been looking at. So the first part, I was wondering about the clay. Hopi clay is, everything I've ever seen has been gray. It's gray. And so the stuff on the left, those are pots that I made before they were fired. So you can see the background clay is gray. It is not yellow. If you get yellow clay, the chances are it's going to be a red pot. But once it is fired, it changes. But the one thing we find out for sure is that the firing environment, and you know this, makes a huge difference in the way it's going to look in the end. So here are some examples of some different pots. And my question here, this is kind of a quiz question. What is similar in all of these? What is the common denominator in all of these pots? And the answer is they all have exactly the same slip. They were all fired pretty much in the same kind of a way. But you can see some of them are kind of pale looking. Some, this one here, if I can get this, is really pretty orange. It really blushed a lot. That's a lot of blush. You see this blush, it kind of comes and it goes. Sometimes with a lot of the modern Hopi stuff, it is pretty much one color, but you'll see these real subtle variations. I personally like it when it's more like this, where you have one side that's kind of orangey, you know, but it's all personal preference. It doesn't really matter. So again, it kind of comes to the firing environment, in which I'm going to get into a little bit. But a big thank you today. Where is my main man here? There he is right there. So Wayne Keene, and he had a partner, which I sometimes forget his name, Rod Swenson. They figured this out. And so you can look this up online. If you just do a search for what makes the Hopi blush, you'll get a great scientific article, because they figured out why it turns this kind of honey, orangey, yellowish kind of color. So let's get into that. So on the left-hand side, this is Nampeo, who I think is a legitimate genius. If you look at her stuff, it is absolutely knock your socks off kind of stuff. She was amazing. I'd love to copy it, but I just don't think it's appropriate that I should copy historic kinds of stuff. And then in the bottom right-hand corner is D. Setala. And so both of these people are firing with sheep dung. So what's the big deal about sheep dung? And so here's, and it's interesting to me too, as I understand it, in general, Hopi don't raise sheep, they raise corn, and they're farmers, but they have this relationship with sheep farmers, so with the Navajo. So they go to the Navajo, they get the sheep dung, and as I understand it, what happens, the sheep go out during the day to the pastures and they eat the grass and stuff, and then they bring them back in to their corrals at nighttime. This is why, and maybe for protection, I don't know, but guess what? While they're there, they do their business, right? And so they are defecating in their corrals, and they do this for years, sometimes decades. But the magic isn't in the dung, it's in the urine. It's in the pee. And so what makes that special? Well, what Wayne found out was that it is the sodium in the urine that actually causes the blush. So you could take some dung, maybe cow dung or whatever kind of dung you find out in the pasture, and you could probably fire with that. So what they do is they build these kind of hives with the piece of, and you have some of the sheep dung in the little packages around. And it makes a pretty hot fire. You can get quite a hot fire, and it burns long and slow. And if you used some cow pies from out in the pasture, it'll fire, and I know someone who does that quite a lot, but you probably really won't get blush, or you might get a little bit, but you probably won't get a lot. And it's this sodium that makes the difference. So the question is, where are you going to get some Navajo sheep dung so you could go fire some pottery of your own? Well, if you know Wayne, he gave me his entire supply, and so that's all gone. But maybe you can figure out on your own. So I'll show you how I do it. One, the first one is to use some sheep dung. This is a very expensive slide. I had the most talented artists to do this for me. So here's what I do. I fire, this is all kind of non-traditional, okay? So I have bricks that I build a kind of a kiln around. And on the bottom, I have a brick and a grate that goes over the top. Then I put a little bit of, I usually use charcoal. I use a lot of lump charcoal, but you can use coal as well. And then I just put 2, 3, maybe 4 of these pieces about the same size that you have in the little Ziploc bag. And what happens is that heats up and it fires and it fumes up in really bizarre kind of ways. You never know what you're going to get, believe me. So then I fill in all the way around, usually 2, 3 inches of charcoal all the way around and over the top. I will also put sherds around the pots, mostly to protect the painting. And it fires usually about 6 hours or so. Usually, and I can normally get, my goal is temps around 850 Celsius, but I can get up close to 1,000 sometimes. After that, it gets to be a little bit too much. And this really works well for me. But again, what if you don't have sheep dung? There's some different way. What I've done, I know it's salt, right? It's sodium chloride, so it's the sodium that makes the difference. So how can you use salt? And you can probably figure out all kinds of ways that you might try. The first thing that I did, I took a bunch of kitchen waste, like potato peels and carrot peels and other stuff they were throwing away, and I dried that out, and then I made a salt mixture of a super concentrated salt mixture. So you put it on the stove. I used 1 cup of salt. I think I was using the salt you use for making ice cream, and 6 cups of water, boiled it up till it all dissolved, then mixed it in with these organics, and then let it dry. And then what I would do is take that stuff and put it in like a tin foil wrapper and poke some holes in it, and then put that underneath where I would have normally put the sheep dung. And that actually works pretty good. I've also used peat. So you can buy dry peat at the garden store, and it's just organic stuff. And then you mix that with the salt mixture, let that dry out, put that in the, again, I have generally put it around aluminum foil, but maybe you could try just sprinkle it on the bottom. I think there's a lot of other things you could use as well. I think with some of Wayne's experiments, they were using grass. You could saturate grass. Yes?
What do you mean by organic?
Well, anything that's going to burn. So whether it's potato peels or peat or grass or leaves or wood chips possibly. So you can think of, but I want something that will soak up the salt and then it burns and fumes up. And so also the way when you build your fire or you position things, you want to think about air currents. So because you can definitely see many times how these air currents come up and they fume and blush your pots. So that's what you're looking at. So another option would be to actually spray this salt on charcoal. I was wondering how that would work. And there's a lot of detail in this, and I'll have to explain it. It's kind of a boring slide, but it's interesting to me. So what I did, you can see the little white dots on the charcoal, and this is lump charcoal. I just sprayed it with this salt mixture. It doesn't really soak in, it just is on the exterior. And then I had some sherds that I made up and just covered them up with charcoal and fired them. So there's a couple things going on here. This one on the bottom has none of this salted charcoal. And then the ones on the top do have salted charcoal. So you can see that the ones with the salted charcoal fumed or blushed. There's actually 2 kinds of Hopi clay here. This is all Hopi clay. And I think it was really interesting. This one looks different than this one. This actually starts turning a little bit black, and you'll see some examples later of some over-fired ones. And that sort of surprised me. I thought it would all blush about the same, but the nature of your clay seems to make a difference with how it absorbs this sodium fuming. I don't understand that. So on this side, this is the salted charcoal went right over the top of it. It was touching the sherds. And this is the salted part. This had, these were not salted charcoal. And it just got terribly black, crusty, nasty. It totally, there's something is happening chemically with the salt and stuff bonding to the clay. I don't know what's going on, but what it does tell me is that it's really important to protect your pots from being in close contact with the salt. So I had another one, whoops, I got to change. So I did it again. This time I covered the test pieces with some sherds so nothing was touched by salt. And so these are both salted. This one is one kind of Hopi clay. This is another one. And so you can see they blushed a little bit differently. But again, just the salted charcoal was on the bottom. And it fumes up. And so it turned out really nice. And so it depends on the clay you're using and probably how much salt you're using. So you just need to experiment with it. And this stuff is fickle. Sometimes it turns out beautiful. Sometimes it is just awful. And I can't fully explain that. And on this side, this is the top side of the test tile. And it had charcoal right on top of it, but no salt. And so you can see it kind of gets fire clouds on it, but it didn't turn that black, crusty stuff. So lesson here is just don't let the salted stuff touch your pots. Okay, this is what can happen when it doesn't go very well. This pot fired fine, except, see all this black stuff? This is supposed to be a nice polychrome. There should be some yellows and reds, obviously blacks, but all this stuff in here, it looks like carbon. It isn't. You can refire this. It's not going to change anything. Sometimes if it gets too hot, I think, or maybe there's too much salt, it fumes up and it bonds to your pot and it's done. So this pot is fine. There's no cracks in it or anything, but something is happening if you get too much salt in it. It interacts and it turns black. So. Again, you never know. I thought this would have been a fine one. Okay, so this shows you a variety of different kinds of pots these are all ones I've made, and the different kinds of levels of blushing that you might find. And I did want to make a comment. What I like to do is blend all these different techniques and make things my own. I think there's some issues of cultural appropriation that we need to think about when you start using patterns and things that our modern day native people are using. I think it's a different story, for me at least, using techniques. But I frequently will use, for example, this one here is very much, it's pretty close to a replication of something that was original Sitkiatki stuff. But I just don't do the modern things. That's up to you, of course. Okay, so I've talked about a variety of different things. So this is the blushing for the historic modern day stuff. What I want to do is talk about some of the old stuff. So I love Jettidoh. Jettidoh is a type of Hopi pottery. It is black on yellow. But what you see here is there's some kind of blushing, like around here and along the sides. But sometimes you'll see Jettidoh and it's just a solid yellow. Some of it's a real kind of almost white creamy color. Some of it is really very yellow. And the paint is frequently a dark brown. But it can also be black as well. What we believe is this stuff was fired with coal by Hopi. So it was a long, hot fire. This is known to be traded all around. It was a very durable kind of pottery that people like to have. And so it gets spread all over the place. In my view, that yellow is beautiful. And that's what I've been after. I've been wanting to get that yellow. So originally I was thinking, well, that is about this fuming, blushing kind of thing. But you know what? Back in 1325 or so, they didn't have sheep. You know, the sheep came with the Spaniards. So how is this getting yellow like that? And I was thinking, though, that it had to do with some kind of a blushing thing. So another one is Sitkiatki. Both, then this is obviously Hopi as well. made in kind of a similar area. I'll show you a map here in just a little bit. But you look at the color of the paste on that, some of it looks kind of like jetted dough, some of it looks kind of blushed, some of it doesn't. It really varies quite a lot. And sometimes, and I really do wonder how much of it is just patina from being really old and in the ground. And so it's really kind of hard to know. And again, I'm just looking at the color of the clay, not of the actual paint that they were using, which was a mineral-based paint. Made about the same time as jetted dough, maybe a little bit later. So this is where it came from. This is a map of Hopi, which is kind of right in the middle of Navajo land. This surprised me. The jetted dough, from what I've read, Third Mesa and Antelope Mesa, and it surprised me that there's two different areas like that. But apparently that's what the archaeologists say. Sitkiatki is just kind of off First Mesa. It was a small village. It's not, no one lives there anymore. And Awadavi, which is very much like Sitkiatki. In fact, some of the stuff you've already seen, and I may pronounce that wrong. I think the difference between Sitkiatki and Awadavi is that one has engraved in it and the other one doesn't. So that's where it comes from. And so there's probably other kinds of villages where similar kinds of pots were made. Okay, so my question was, how do you get this yellow color? These are actual sherds of jetted dough. And so you can see that the outside color and the inside color are essentially the same. There's a little bit of difference, not a lot. Now sometimes with jetted dough too, this is kind of an orangey color. There's quite a variance sometimes in the colors. But again, looking at the inside and the outside are basically the same color. But if you looked at a modern day Hopi pot, that fuming or blushing is going to be on the outside. It doesn't penetrate all the way through. So I thought it was about fuming, but really it's more about the clay. And so the clay sites vary. I'm sure that there's many different places in Hopi where you might pick clay, and the colors you're going to get are going to be different, or a little bit different. Oop. So what I did, I took some Hopi clay, two different kinds, and then I fired it with charcoal, and then I just broke them open to see, well, is the outside any different from the inside? And it is a little bit. It's hard to tell. There's a little bit of fuming here, and this was with just regular charcoal, but I use a Cowboy brand lump charcoal, and I get blushing with that without any sheep dung at all. So there's something going on in there. But for the most part, the inside is the same as the outside. So the key for this old prehistoric stuff is more about the clay, I think, but the firing environment seems to make a difference as well. And I think particularly if it's a hot, slow, very oxidized kind of a fire makes a big difference. The other thing is this is all clay that is real low in iron. So sometimes you do see some stuff that's a little bit on the orangey side, but mostly it's that more cream color or yellow color. So many of you are maybe familiar with IPG, Industrial Park Gray. This is a clay that's commonly used, but it has a very low iron content in it. And so I was curious, how close can I get to getting a yellow clay with that? So this was fired in an electric kiln, but relatively hot, 850 Celsius, and it turned kind of yellow. And what I have seen is that some of these clays, like IPG number 10, they fume up pretty good sometimes. If you're using sodium, and I'm getting back to that old historic stuff, but you can get some fuming looking with this stuff like that too. So last year, Bobby Silas was at the Kiln Conference, and he did a demonstration coal firing, and my plan is to do one tomorrow as well. So I wanted to explain real quickly what he did and what I saw. First, he did have a fire that he used for preheating his pots, although it didn't look like he heated them up very much. So then what he did, he put some small bits of coal, and I think it's very similar coal to what I sent around. Small pieces of coal, but not a lot of it, on the ground. He put some sherds on top of that, and then the pots on the sherds. He didn't really raise it up. There wasn't, I was surprised, there wasn't a lot of ventilation underneath those pots. So then what you do is you build a wall around, just, it looks very much like with the sheep dung that they use. It's like building a rock wall with the coal. And with lignite coal, it's frequently kind of flakes, and so it's fairly easy to build with. And so then the only time you use any sherds that he used is right on the very top. He's bridging from the top of the coal wall to the top of his pots. And then he piles coal on top of that. So everything gets completely surrounded with coal. And then it gets started all the way around, which is tricky. And coal is interesting stuff. I don't know if you've ever used it. And I'm going to kind of quit because, one, it's a pain to use. It's hard to get started. And when it does start, it smokes and it stinks. The good news is it's cheap. It's a 10% the cost of a regular charcoal. And you can get some pretty good results. So here you can see it burning it. And his burned overnight. It takes several hours for it to all go. And then this was the final pot. Obviously Hopi clay in it. So it's a real pale yellow. There's not a lot of yellowness to that. But obviously it's a Sitkiatki style. So here's some of the pots that I have done with Hopi clay. And one in particular, this one here is spot on, I think, for Jedido. But it was fired with coal. So I was tickled to death to get that. And this one kind of has that same color. It's the same, that's all slipped. Now so these are both fired with charcoal. This one was fired with coal, but it's still the same slip. So it's not nearly as yellow. I don't think that fire got as hot. I've had a hard time getting a coal fire to get as hot as a charcoal fire. And a lot of the coal that I use just has a lot of ash, and that ash falls down and it starts choking out the fire and it cools it off. And so I don't get those really, I think you need hot. Really hot, and a lot of oxygen is going to make the difference. Here's an example of some pots that I did with coal. So you can see some interesting kind of blushing along the edges, but they didn't turn yellow. Now this was a slightly different slip than the previous slide. But look at this, the ash here. There's a lot of stuff in this lignite coal. Mine comes from North Dakota, so it's known as dirty coal. Sometimes they call it brown coal. There's just a lot of impurities in it. And I think the ash is actually beautiful. It has all these really neat kind of colors in it. But there was a lot of ash, and it tends to choke things out. This firing turned out to be pretty decent. But I've had some that didn't do very well at all. So these are the pots I'm going to plan to fire tomorrow. And so one is Jedido, the other is more of a Sitkiatki style. So hopefully they turn yellow. We'll see. So if you're interested in checking out, please do so, I guess. And I don't know how my time is. So takeaways. One, if you're interested in that look for that modern Hopi blush, it's all about the salt. And so I think you can probably figure out some different ways to do it. And maybe you can find somebody at Navajo or in Hopi who is willing to get you some slip and get you some sheep dung. But I think you can do a lot of this stuff on your own. So with all of these, they tend to be high oxygenated kinds of fires and pretty hot fires for the most part. And you want a low iron kind of clay. And certainly with the pre-contact stuff, the Jedido and Sitkiatki, that's harder because I think it really depends a lot on the clay. And you just have to search for it, I suppose. So the other thing I want to mention, if you aren't familiar with my YouTube channel, this is unabashed advertising, Airstream Wanderings. It's a title that makes no sense whatsoever because it's all about pottery. But if you're interested, please check it out. So, questions, comments? Yes, sir.
Do you have an Airstream trailer you travel in?
I do. I do have an Airstream trailer. I was going to do a travel video thing and nobody was interested, so yeah. Yes.
Oh, I have a question. Could you soak horse manure
Oh, yeah.
and probably do this?
Yeah, if it's all dried out, if you've got, yeah, I don't see why you couldn't. And I know someone who uses cow chips, you know, and especially on the desert, they dry out really nice and they burn pretty good. But the thing with this sheep dung, it's really compressed. Did you see it? Even when it fires, it comes out as a little brick. It doesn't completely flake apart. So it's really an amazing fuel. I can see why they use it. Yes, Kyle.
Yeah. Are you, tomorrow when you do your firing, are you going to use cover shirts?
I will on top, and I don't know, I might a little bit on the side. The other thing is I'm going to raise it up and create more airspace underneath and also more space for the ashes to drop down.
Have you typically been using cover shirts?
Yes. Yes. I've tried some where you build this wall with just the coal, you know, and it's surprising. It doesn't leave that many marks on your pots. Maybe it's just because it's hot enough. I'm not sure why that is. Yes, sir.
When you fire your coal, do you add air or it's just naturally aspirated?
Yeah, natural, but I think with all of these things, and like even when I used the brick kiln thing, is to create air spaces for the air to get in there. Because if you don't have a hot fire, it's probably because you don't have enough air. Yeah. So now Bobby said he wanted a still night. He fires at nighttime because there's less wind. I'm kind of thinking a little bit of wind can help. Depends if it's too much, it would be all one-sided, I know, but air is hugely important to a hot fire. Yes?
Well, it looks, looking at that coal ash and the very yellow tone to it, is there a lot of sulfur in that coal?
I think so. That's one reason they're shutting down a lot of those coal electrical plants. I don't know what it's all in there, but there's a lot of junk in that.
I was wondering if it contributed to the yellowish tone.
It could. I've wondered about that. Yeah. Yeah. Yes?
Historically, were shards used? I mean, way back, were shards used, or do we know?
I don't know, but when I look at the Jedido stuff, I got to believe they did. But I don't know. Now, when Bobby fired, and he's more the Sitkiatki guy, he didn't have any sherds on the side, just on the top, and that was mostly to hold up the coal. Yes?
And the bowl mouth is facing up. It's not inverted, is that correct?
That's right. And so he has a sherd over the top so ash doesn't go down. But yeah, they fire right side up, which is interesting. I think we're good, Andy. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.